Good morning, my name is Noreen Mcbrien. I'm a superintendent in An Garda Síochána in Ireland. And I will just explain to you, first of all, I'm going to give you a brief overview of our organisation in the national context and then the role of the reserve within our organisation. I have never been an auxiliary police officer. I'm a full-time superintendent within An Garda Síochána. I have 33 years service within An Garda Síochána and I have worked in many areas. And my last two postings were both operational district commands as superintendent. And I have taken this role up in charge of the Garda Reserve management within the organisation within the past year. Just to give an idea of where we fit in Europe, we're very much to the west. It's next stop USA, and we have a border. Ireland is an island, and the top 6 counties are part of the UK, and we have a border. We have an open border with them now, and the future will tell how that works out. Nobody really knows which way that's going to work out with Brexit. But at the moment, you can drive from the south into the north of Ireland. And this is just a map of how we police Ireland. It's divided into regions, and each region has an assistant commissioner. They have several divisional chief superintendents and then superintendents. We're a national police force, so there's only the one police force for the whole of Ireland. We have a triple mandate. We have policing, national security and intelligence and immigration. We have a population of 4.75 million. We're spread, as I say, across 6 regions, and the current strength of the job is 13,032 full-time members. That includes members of all ranks, and we've 659 reserves. So who we are, we were established following the establishment of the Irish Free State in 1922. The Dublin Metropolitan Police merged with the recently established Garda Síochána in 1925. Robert Peel, as Alan mentioned yesterday, he set up our kind of policing structure, but it said he did a trial run in Ireland before he established it in the UK. We're a long-standing community policing ethos. Our first commissioner, Michael Stein, said it's not by force of arms or strength of numbers, but with the moral authority of people. We work very, very close to the community, and we are unarmed, and we always say the best form of dealing with things is verbal communication, engage with people. We have a high public satisfaction rating, but we have taken a few knocks in the last couple of months, but we're still in there. Just to give you roughly a structure of the way we work, at the top we have the Minister for Justice, and then there's 3 layers of external oversight, which I will explain. Then we have our commissioner, and then feeding in from a lower level into our commissioner is the audit committee, the internal audit, the JPCs as we call them, which are joint policing committees, which have members of local county councils and communities and interested parties, and then local policing fora, which is a smaller version of the same. The Garda Inspectorate, they were established in 2006. And their role is, they're usually made up of external police officers from other jurisdictions. And they examine our processes and that, and see that we're using our resources right. They check them against international best practice, and they make recommendations. And we usually try to follow on to most of the recommendations. We don't follow on to them all, but we try to follow on to as many as we can. So they do a lot of international research and that, and evaluate our system against them. The Garda Síochána Ombudsman Commission, this is really to do with discipline and guards if members behave outside the norms. They were set up in 2007, and their function is to deal with matters involving possible misconduct by members of the Garda Síochána. And the main ways that incidents are reported to them is by a complaint by a member of the public, or by a referral of an incident by us to them, or they can conduct an inquiry in the public interest. Most of their investigations, though, they send back to us to investigate, so that's a lot of workload for people of my level. Then the Policing Authority, this is a very new concept for us. It was only set up in 2016, and they oversee our policing performance and services, and they replace the Minister for Justice for a lot of her role in liaising with the police. There's a chairman and there's a board and 8 members, and they have a secretariat, and they hold meetings with the Commissioner, at least 4 in public, of which are live streamed. And one very interesting thing, in the last promotion competition for Chief Superintendents and Assistant Commissioners, they held the competitions. It was taken out of our hands and they held the competitions. So that was quite unusual for us. And they've also made a recommendation, I read this morning, that from the rank of superintendent up, that external police officers from all other forces can join, where now it's only open to ourselves and the PSNI, which police the 6 counties north of us. Just to give you an idea of the rank structure, we wear the very same uniform. Our reserves wear the very same uniform. So the one there with the GR and the pale blue crest, that's a Garda Reserve in training. And the one to the next of that is a full-time member in training. That's the epaulets they wear. The next one is the Garda Reserve and their district number when they've passed out, when they're working full-time. And the GR on the epaulette is the only difference between a Garda Reserve's uniform and a full-time member's uniform. The one there which has the D285 is a full-time member's epaulette. Then we have the sergeants, the inspectors, the superintendents, the chief superintendents, the assistant commissioners, the deputies and the commissioners, but there is no difference with the uniform. That is just the numbers we have in ranks in our job from the commissioner. We've one commissioner. We have a female commissioner at the moment, and they was recruited from within the organisation, though the advertisement went externally. We've 2 deputy commissioners, 7 assistant commissioners. These are all Garda personnel. We have 1 person of the rank of deputy commissioner who's a civilian. We've 164 superintendents, of which I am one of them. Most of those would hold operational district portfolios, and then there's some in specialist positions like myself. Then we have inspectors, sergeants, Gardaí, and then we have Garda Reserve. Now, the Garda Reserve to date, we are fairly new to auxiliary policing. In 2005, there was a Garda Síochána Act, and that provided for the establishment of a Garda Reserve. And at its largest, the Garda Reserve had 1,201 members, and there's currently 659. So when the Garda Reserve was initially proposed, it wasn't welcome in all aspects of the job, because there was lots of the issues that people have spoken about, like is it going to cut overtime, is it going to undermine my role, all that type of thing. That's the first class of the Garda Reserves, and they graduated in the 15th of December 2016. They all went out to different stations then around and performed their duty, and some of them are still with us. This is just a breakdown by the division of the way the Garda Reserve are divided. As you can see, most of them are as what we call the DMO, which is the Dublin Metropolitan Region. It has 191 reserves. They're used better in some areas than others. We have to look at that to see how we can develop that role and how we can utilise them and how we can integrate them even more into the organisation. And that is one of my roles to do over the next few years. On the left-hand side there, you have the numbers of the reserves as they came into the job. And then at its height was around 2013. And you can see then there's quite a decrease. A lot of those people who are on the chart that left, a lot of them have joined the full-time service. But then also when I took up my role, I realised when I looked at it nationally, there was a lot of reserves that were there in our system that weren't performing. So I put processes in place to try and move them on, and that's how there has been a reduction. Okay, that was just to give you a flavour. That's from our recent recruitment campaign. There are 2 younger members who are now in the full-time organisation. But we recruit people from 18 till 60, and they can stay until they're 65. And we also aim to get people in the older age groups, because they tend to stay longer, because a lot of the young people do tend to go into the full-time organisation. Our office was set up in June 2016. It's based in human resource management in the Garda headquarters. We're responsible for policy, regulations, recruitment, retention, marketing and reserve probationers. I have had no handover. There was an office there before, not in the same location, so there's been about a 6-year gap. This was caused by the crisis, the financial crisis, the home, where a lot of things were reprioritised. So I have a lot of catch up, and I'm trying to find a lot of things that happened before, but I'm working at it. There's myself, the superintendent, a sergeant, a guard and a civilian clerical officer. The roles and responsibilities of reserves, they carry out and assist in crime prevention, road traffic duties, including the fixed charge penalty system, duties at major events, they assist with station duties, they assist guarding in the execution of their duties, they perform duties in a prompt, responsible and professional manner, they maintain a practical work and knowledge of legislation, and they are aware of policing plans, and they should attend CPD courses. And this is the 10-year anniversary of the Garda Reserve. One thing I noticed when I took up the job is there was no recognition for people who had any long service. So we wrote to the Commissioner, and she gave sanction for us to give a 10-year certificate. She presented the first ones, and they will be done every year going forward for members who have completed 10 years service in the Garda Reserve. This was very welcomed. Deployment. Our reserves have to be accompanied by a full-time member all the time, and that is another thing, and it's a great benefit for me to talk to other people here. That is something we hope to develop, that they may be able to work in pairs. They can do station duty other than the custody and care of prisoners. They can do station orderly, communications room duties, patrols, road traffic checkpoints, the fixed charge penalty notice. They can serve summonses, they can do duty on out recordings of events, they can assist in accidents on fires, and they can give evidence in court. And they also should be doing community and neighbourhood policing, and they can preserve crime scenes. What they cannot do is, they cannot do any kind of plainclothes duty, they cannot drive an official vehicle, they cannot carry a firearm. We're an unarmed force anyway, only specialist units carry firearms, and they're prohibited from patrolling on mountain bikes. They have extensive legislative powers to enable them to carry out these functions, and these were expanded in 2015 and are constantly reviewed to see that we need to expand them more. Points to note, one of the things that is painful for me is that their duties recorded manually. So if I get a question how many reserves and carried is so many hours last year, it's a manual trawl, and that is something we're getting a new computer system in next year that should on a national basis for full and reserve members track all that. Our reserve members get an annual allowance of €1,000 for 208 hours worked. I've made a recommendation that be reduced, that they only have to work 150 hours to get that €1,000. That's an allowance, and it's tax-free. They cannot serve on juries because they're members of An Garda Síochána, so therefore they're exempt from it. They cannot serve on a jury. We now, if you want to get into the Garda Síochána, and we're trying to encourage young people to join the reserve first, if they do 120 hours in 2 of the previous years, they're exempt from the first stage of the recruitment competition for the full time. They're governed by the very same regulations as the full time for discipline, and our discipline code is quite strict. That can be difficult for them because the fact they're not doing the same amount of hours, they might be as aware of some of the things they can and cannot do. And they're subject to an investigation by GSOC. They're voluntary, so there's no career breaks, and they have access to the Chief Medical Officer for injury on duty. They're subject to all the relevant policies such as bullying and harassment, our protected disclosure policy, which is a new policy in where if somebody sees something wrong, they can make a disclosure and have it examined confidentially. They can avail of all the employee assistance services in relation to if an incident happened on duty. So they can access our 24/7 helpline, our peer support, our employee assistance, any of that. They get the very same services, but for a reserve, it has to be only in relation to something that happens on duty. Data protection is one area that I'm always trying to reinforce and have our training people reinforce with them, because I find data protection and social media are the 2 areas where they're most likely to err and get into trouble. So that's one thing. I think social media is something the use of is new to all of us. That is another thing. When we applied for the certificates on 10-year service, feedback from reserve said, you don't give us anything if we're retiring. They retire at 65. That gentleman in the middle was an ex-fireman in Dublin. They can retire, fire service can retire at 55. He joined the Garda Reserve, and in my dealings with Dublin Fire Brigade, I met his chief fire officer, who's the gentleman in the tunic. So he was the first person to get the presentation of the certificate, and as a surprise we brought his chief fire officer, and Dublin Fire Brigade, his old employer, made a big event of it and gave him an award that night as well. So that was a very good night. So going forward what we want to do, we have launched a new recruitment campaign. The government wants us to get 2,000 reserves by 2021. It's a challenge to do that because we're recruiting very aggressively now for the full-time service, and also you want to get people, but you want to get quality people. As I say, it's a big challenge to get that, because as you get them in, some of them are leaving as well. I want to introduce something with regard to paired patrolling, or give the reserves more autonomy in some of the duties they can carry out. A team site is something we're trying to do on our own internal Garda portal. All our IT system is being radically overhauled. It's quite dated, but we find communicating with reserves very difficult. A lot of them don't log into their email when they come in. They don't check on the pulse system. Some of them don't answer their phones if they're contacted by the station, and that causes a lot of bad feeling. So we want to keep them up to date with everything with a team site. And then training. Originally the Garda Reserves, when they applied to join, were trained in their local CPD school for their first part of their training, apart from the physical training which is done at the Garda College in Templemore. It went back then that they would do their 2 weeks training in Templemore, which was difficult because a lot of them had to take 2 weeks off work. Now we're going to try get that they go back and they do it in their CPD local CPD, and that should be more useful and more beneficial. So that is my presentation. I'm sorry about my voice. You may thank Anna for giving me strepsils that got me this far. And has anybody got any questions that you'd like to ask?